is Tuesday, March 21st, 2023 at 10:23 a.m. Eastern Time, USA. This is my video journal. I'm Mitch Miller. Today, supposedly, Donald Trump is going to be processed into a jail system in New York State, I believe, for hush money to a adult film star. And I'll just be brief about that. As police officers, if you think about what you're doing as far as arresting people, you're processing them into the system. You're putting their name and information into a computer system that can then, through AI and supercomputing technology, make sense of what's going on in the world. At the very least, you're verifying their identity. But that's the criminal justice system we have now. It's a little bit out of control, but it's all about inputting information into a computer. So I think it'll do a lot of good to have Donald Trump's official information identified in a criminal justice computer system. Might solve some crimes, might do a lot of good. So I think it's a good thing, regardless of what the outcome of the trial is. So I want to talk about inflation and how it's basically a scam, right? Inflation is a scam. It's mainly the fault of the wealthy and the ultra-wealthy, and it's to protect all the old people who are retiring now, right? So if we think about scarcity and exclusivity, right? I asked the Chairman Powell of the Fed, Treasurer Yellen of the Secretary of the Treasury, how much of inflation is actually about elitism, right? What motivates the wealthy that own all of the capital and control most of the means of production? What motivates them to meet the needs of consumers? And their mindset is that they're elite, they like scarcity, they like to have the top-end car that nobody else can buy, the properties that nobody else can go to. They like that exclusivity. What is their motivating mentality to buy more cogs to make more washing machines, right? The price of the cogs went up a fraction of a cent per cog. So now they're playing the game of how many of washing machines can I make and how much can I raise the price if those cogs went up some to keep my margins larger is what they're playing the game of. They're making their margins larger, their profit margins larger, based off of scarcity and a natural raising of prices. And there's no way to freeze their margins. You know, we don't have transparent companies where people can say, wait, these companies raised their margins even though the price of a cog only went up 0.01 cent. They raised it $1 for the machine. So you have this, they're playing a game. They don't mind having scarcity because they can afford all the scarce items. So they're playing a game as they can afford to buy all those cogs. They have the cushion to keep prices the same and still buy the required elements to meet demand. But they're not motivated by, they're no longer motivated by, I can sell 1,000 more of these units because demand went up. They're trying to, because it fluctuates, they're trying to play the game of how can I improve my margins and still put out the same amount of goods, right? And their mentality isn't always I can produce more, grow because customer demand's going to be there. Their Their mentality is, I own everything, so we're just going to play this game and raise our products along with all the other products. So I say that this exclusivity idea, right? How do you kind of break this a little bit, right? Like, I guess my example is this. There are ways to, without mandating that profit margins be this much, or without mandating that people only make $1 million a year, you could motivate people. You could say you could have vacation resorts in exotic locations all around the world, and we could work with developing nations to make safe places to build resorts, right? But these are usually geared towards the ultra wealthy so that they can have access to different parts of the world. But you could do exclusivity, and you could say, if you want to access this resort, you have to submit your tax filing, and we're going to, if you make over $400,000 a year, right, that's the target for the U.S., for at least for Biden, is $400K a year. They're not going to raise taxes. So if you make under $400K a year as a household, or $200K a year as an individual, then you get access to these resorts, all these exotic resorts around the globe, right? If you make more than that, you're not allowed on our resort, right? You could do that. You could, instead of, there's nothing that says in these other countries that we can't mandate that, right? You just don't do it because it just naturally occurs through capitalism that the wealthiest people can afford that exclusivity, and the middle class that is making $400K, they can't always afford that because they have other expenses. But you could change the target, and then some of these ultra wealthy people, they're going to buy a villa in the same area anyway, but so it's not going to affect them really. But you could kind of play with the mentality and the psychology, because that's what it's all about, is this psychology that the wealthy are using on the masses to hypnotize and coerce them into doing different things. Not to mention the criminal justice system using law to change behavior, which is not the best use of the law, as we've seen. So the other thing you could, so the reason I'm saying this, I said on the last one, 160K, if everybody made 160K, we would solve Social Security. Now, I know what you're thinking, you can't set the minimum wage at $160,000 a year. Inflation will go through the roof. But I think we could. I think we could do that. What I'm a big advocate for is taking a city like Pittsburgh and using it as a testing ground and experimentation. And I think the federal government should fund these types of experiments. We could take a city hypothetically and put an aggressive minimum wage step-up program in place, and we could have everybody sign on like a social contract that lives in the city. We're not going to go out and buy a bunch more goods because we now have all this income. We're going to, if we raise the income levels citywide in this way, we're going to invest it in, green energy, or which isn't that expensive, so it would be pretty cheap to do. But hypothetically, we could work with other countries to build resorts, right? If everybody's making 160K, even your waitress and bartender, maybe they're looking at their retirement program. If they have access to a bunch of exclusive resorts all over the world, maybe they'll invest in building these resorts, and we can work city to resort to resort to resort, and so on and so forth. But I have a plan. I have a platform that I haven't expressed on any medium that's up in my head that can deal with inflation, that can solve all these issues, and we could enact that in at least one city as a testing ground, and see if we can raise the minimum income up at least to a high degree to start to solve Social Security. So you could argue it like that. We're trying to solve Social Security, so we're funding these programs in this one city. We don't want the whole national economy to get out of whack, to inflation to skyrocket. We're going to see if we can have a micro economy in one city. You can exempt people, like they could, if they're tourists and they only make $20,000 or $30,000 a year, they could be exempt from the $50 or the $200 stake or whatever that works out to be. There's ways that we can register and use online platforms with high degrees of security to exempt people and work them into the economy, even though everybody's making $100,000 a year. So that's the main gist of what I wanted to say. I do have a platform that addresses scarcity, a way for us to not deal with inflation. And I guess the final thing I wanted to talk about with inflation is you have to deal. The chairman of the Fed has to deal with inflation because you have a huge mass of people retiring, the baby boomers, and their retirement is fixed now. And so if inflation and the cost of products go up, their retirement savings is worth a lot less, right? So you have to do something to deal with inflation, but it's a scam. I mean, the ultra wealthy that own all the capital and all the means of production are driving it. They could bear the cushion of it, right, for several years probably until it's stabilized. We raise the interest rates, then the bankers who own all the capital, now they can charge a higher interest rate on everything, so they make a ton of money, right? So either way, the ultra wealthy are going to make a bunch of money off of any kind of fluctuation in consumer demand. So that's why I say it's a scam. I mean, you're raising interest rates so that consumer demand goes down, but I think there's a better way to organize consumer demand, and it's not communism. It's just an innovative idea that I think we could do, and it would work with existing corporations to produce goods. It's a platform I have, and I'd like to launch it. But the other thing I would say is the banking divestment that I was talking about at the Treasury level to address Social Security. The precursor to that is my Green Energy Fund, right? If we develop this platform as a nonprofit, we can lease it out to different community banks that want to run, because that's the other thing. If you had transparency in banking, you could see what bankers make. You could say the top bankers can't make $5 million or $30 million a year. It's our money. We have to pay for institutions to safeguard it. And we could base the income of bankers better off of growing our money and keeping it safe than just simply taking wild chances on investments. My point is, we have a crowd-funded direct democracy banking system that needs less managers, less bank CEOs, and can go community by community. We can look at the risk ticket for this business. They need this much of a loan. They're willing to pay this much interest, and we can use that. And those already exist. Crowdsourced bank loan systems on the internet. I know they're there. I'm saying we kind of launch another one that functions more through direct democracy, and you know, it's probably bankers that own those online platforms, so they're not as willing to lease out the platform community by community and eliminate their traditional banks. They have a deadlock. They have the patented technology for doing those type of transactions. They have the promissory notes and all copyrighted and stuff like that. So we need to develop our own so that we can lease it to the federal government for the Social Security program and things like that. So that's why I'm trying to form this nonprofit. It could be a precursor to banking systems, could be a precursor to a lot of things. So if you'd like to help build that, please contact me, and yeah, we'll go from there. Join me tomorrow when I talk about the flood vehicles and robot project and another fund that I think would be interesting and help develop small businesses community by community. Thanks for watching, and join me tomorrow.